Despite having voted for Biden last time, 21-year-old Elena Symes couldn't point me to anything that would make her want to vote for him again, except...
What do you like about Joe Biden?
That he's not Trump.
There you go. The Democrat Party answer. That was ABC News' Martha Raddatz. Raddatz asking a random Democrat voter on the street, why would you want to vote for Biden again? And if you want to stump a Democrat, there are a lot of ways to stump Democrats today. How many genders are there? Does it pretty much every time. We got another one of those today. You see the 12-year-old kid in Massachusetts taking it to the school board because he wore a T-shirt to school. And on the T-shirt, the chest, it says, there are only two genders. So naturally, he was kicked out of school, thrown into a gulag. Now he's making tennis shoes for LeBron James somewhere west of Wuhan, China, because you're not allowed to say anything out loud or express a thought that deviates from the Democrat Party's talking points. This is a great, and the kid is very articulate. My best girl was listening to the video, watching the video. I was listening to it across the room on Saturday, and I said, very articulate young man. Is that racist? Can I say that? Is that racist? Seems like a smart kid, and we've got that. That's amazing. We also have a professor for you of climatology. He's a climate stuff professor, and he talks about, he made a video too, or he's on video, talking about global warming and global cooling. And, what kind of time frame are we talking about here? And I'll share that with you. Amazing stuff. But yeah, ABC This Week, Martha Raddatz. I actually used to work with her a bit at the Pentagon long ago. And asking a typical Democrat out on the street, hey, Joe Biden, why would you want to vote for Joe Biden? Isn't he great? The New York Times has a big piece on Joe Biden today. They're one of their fluffers, Maureen Dowd. She got the fluffer at the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday night. She got the Fluffer of the Year award. They got a Fluffer of the Year award. In Los Angeles, that's a completely different award. Or is it? That's one of the questions. But Maureen Dowd with an amazing thing. Scranton Joe is ready to go. Scranton Joe is ready to go. That's in the New York Times because they're fluffers. It's a fluffer paper. They make sandwiches with their fluffernutter, and it's an amazing thing. Now, lot to talk about other than me, but let's get back to me for a minute. The Saturday night was the annual White House Correspondents Association dinner in Washington, D.C., and I was invited to attend by my good friends at Newsmax Television, where you may have seen the Biden Chronicles television shows, their humorous light take on Joe Biden. To the extent that that's possible, it's sad, really. It's some people suggested that the show is elder abuse and might be illegal. Because, like the kid's T-shirt in Massachusetts, frowned upon. But I want to talk about the White House Correspondents Association dinner, which I did attend with my friends at Newsmax. And I was also there. It's not the reason I was there, but once it was learned that I would be at the dinner, I was asked if I would go up on stage and meet the President of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden, and accept an award on behalf of my recently deceased stepfather, Bill Plant, a longtime CBS News correspondent and a very long-time White House correspondent for CBS News. And an award was given on Saturday night before last. And so I was also at the dinner to accept the presentation of the award. They asked me to keep my remarks to 3 hours, because usually once I start, it takes a while for me to stop because that's how it goes. So we've got lots and lots, and I've got audio for you from the White House Correspondents' Dinner, not just because, my name was uttered and I was introduced on stage and went over and talked to President Joseph Robinette Biden. Also, Kamala Harris. Now, Kamala Harris gave me a standing ovation. Did you see that? Kamala Harris, she has no idea who I am, of course. But Kamala Harris gave me a standing ovation. I just came out on stage and she was being polite and she stood up and was applauding as I went by. And that's kind of a keeper. I think I might have a T-shirt made out of that, of Kamala Harris giving me a standing ovation. They have no idea what's going on in the world around them. The Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But I've got a lot to say about the Correspondents' Dinner and my interaction with the president, my brief interaction with Kamala Harris. Actually, there are two different interactions. And we're going to have, because there are photos, we call them screen grabs. Everybody knows screen grabs. CNN carried the event live. My alma mater, CNN, carried the event live. And a couple of screen grabs, one where I'm standing there shaking hands with Joseph Robinette Biden and speaking to him, and he's speaking to me. And we're going to have a captioning contest, a contest where you can add a caption to the photo, either a caption or, what was said, Joe said, then Chris said, or Chris said, then Joe said. So we're going to post the photo of me with Joe Biden on the Twitter, where you can add a caption, on the Facebook, where you can add a caption, Instagram, and Boogaloo. Boogaloo. There is no such thing as Boogaloo. Just kidding. But there are all these various things. We're gonna put on Facebook and on the Twitter and on Instagram, and you can add a caption. And then there's me on stage shaking hands with Kamala Harris, and you can add a caption. You can add a caption as well. So we'll have some fun with that. And also, a bit about, did you see, what's her name, Chrissy Teigen? Did you see her coming in? She was there with John Legend. I guess they're an item. I think they're an item. And she came in, she was wearing a very dramatic outfit. Chrissy Teigen, she was a fashion model for a long time. Is she still a fashion model, Michael? Probably still a fashion model. And she was coming in, and she had a dress with, if it were wedding day, you might say had a long train. That is to say, there's a lot of fabric dragging behind her, which is a really bad idea in a room as crowded as this one, because it will invariably be stepped on, and then you're going to have to, I've seen that movie. It gets pulled off. But the three, they had slaves. That was, they had slaves following her. It was like a Cecil B. DeMille production, and she was Elizabeth Taylor. And as she sashayed past the environmental protesters, this was kind of amusing, in front of the hotel, she had first two and then three individuals holding up the fabric and walking behind her because the dress was, you think it was too big? Because that was, it was that way by design. So I'll get into some of that stuff because it was wacky. Not my first White House Correspondents' Dinner, it would be fair to say, but many stories that came from the Riley Gaines was there with the person formerly known as Bruce Jenner, and I ran into Caitlyn Jenner, and I turned, I said, "Excuse me," and I thought to myself, "Man, that is one tall woman. That is a tall drink of water." Then I did a double take there, and I said, "Hey, wait a minute. Now I recognize." And I said, because there was this choke point at our table, and I said, "Sorry, I got a little gridlock here." And the person formerly known as Bruce Jenner said, "Well, it's all Riley Gaines." And then I looked over there, and sure enough, there's Riley Gaines, the swimmer woman who's standing up for women everywhere. We've got updates on that as well. It's this White House dinner is a strange thing. So we've also got more on Joe Biden. Biden's misleading deficit claim earns him a bottomless Pinocchio. Bottomless Pinocchio. I think that's another movie they made in the San Fernando Valley, isn't it? And so the Washington Post gives him I've never even heard of a bottomless Pinocchio. Do you get that at brunch? At the drag brunch. I think you get it at the drag brunch. Bottomless Pinocchio. So it's like, normally you get a maximum of 4 Pinocchios, but his lie is so gigantic. How gigantic is it? That even the Washington Post gave him a bottomless Pinocchio. Best and worst moments of the White House Correspondents' Dinner from our good friends at Newsbusters and Media Research Center. And you know who it is? It's Kevin Tober, our very own social media guru, Kevin Tober, that wrote the story for Newsbusters. Wonderful stuff. And the great story, there are news stories, actual news stories. Peak liberalism. Chrissy Teigen attends White House Correspondents' Dinner with a flock of servants trailing her to hold up her dress. It made headlines. And they'll look at this and say, "Oh, look, they're talking about me." That's the thing. Amazing stuff. And we had Ron Klain. Remember him? He was the chief of staff to Joe Biden at the White House for a period of time. Now he's not. And he had some crazy stuff to say. We've had also in the bad news category an illegal alien who sneaked in the country over Joe Biden's open border, massacred a family of 5 people in Texas using a rifle. They're saying it was an AR-15 style rifle because the Democrats want to score some points out of this massacre. And it turns out the family that was massacred were all in the country illegally. That is to say, they were all illegal aliens in the country illegally. And then the murderer that murdered them also in the country illegally. And then our government put out the wrong picture, a picture of the wrong guy, and they misspelled his name. So the manhunt was on for a guy in the government, our government, Joe Biden, put out the wrong picture of the wrong person, and misspelled his name. And the news media is just ignoring it and moving on because the only thing they care about is AR-15 rifle. Let's ban those. And Governor Abbott is under attack because he pointed out that it was the family that was massacred. It's like the book In Cold Blood, Truman Capote, the movie In Cold Blood, Truman Capote, that massacre of the family in the house by a psychopath, and the illegal alien who was shooting up the neighborhood, and his neighbors, also illegal aliens, Spanish-speaking, came over and said, "Hey, could you knock off the gunfire? We got kids over here and stuff." And then he walked over and massacred the family in the house, starting with mom. And then they got the 8-year-old. He got the 8-year-old. And now he's gone because the border's open both ways. See, it's like a revolving door. And he threw his cell phone away. First thing he did was throw his cell phone away, and he's gone. And I suspect that this guy will never be caught because he's just going to flee back to, but we got that. So we got, and I've got lots of news and information and some audio for you on that as well. There was a councilman, a Republican councilman, an elected official, who announced he's a white guy. He's a white guy. And I think he's a straight white guy, I'm guessing. And he looks like a straight white guy. What exactly does a straight white guy look like? Well, I'll show you a picture of this guy, and you'll say, oh, yeah, I like that. And so the GOP councilman announces that he identifies as a lesbian and a woman of color. It's like in 7th grade. However, last Friday, I actually identified as a woman for 60 seconds. Remember that, Michael? For 60 seconds on Friday, I identified as a woman, and I went through some emotional upheaval. It was a roller coaster, and then I for a moment I wanted to have children desperately, and then the moment passed, and I was back to there. So that's right. We timed it and everything. And then I was fine again. I was fine. Yeah, so this councilman, he announced that he identifies as a woman of color, and he's a lesbian. And now liberals who have no sense of humor, they call themselves liberals, but they're not really. They have no sense of humor about themselves, certainly. They all want him fired and canceled and to have no income and to live in a cardboard box because you can't make jokes about them like the Middleborough Mass student, the kid who wore the T-shirt that said there are only 2 genders, and they canceled him and they drove him out of school. And he's like, wait a minute, there are trans and rainbow flags all over the school, and they teach us this stuff in class, and I wear a T-shirt that says there are only 2 genders, and you send me home and tell me I can't wear that? Deutschland, über alles. I remember when liberals, self-identified liberals, actually believed in free speech. Those days are gone. Boy, are those days gone. Amazing. Yeah, Delaware County, Indiana councilman said that he's a woman of color now. He's white and he's a man, at least outwardly. He appears to be. But honestly, he's making a point that they miss, right? And that is and he makes the point, and he says it out loud. He says, well, wait a minute, you can't tell me that I'm not, because you've been telling all of us for years that we are whatever we say we are, and now I say I'm, Rachel Dolezal said she's black, and Rachel Dolezal is a woman, right? As far as we know. And Senator Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren said that she's a Cherokee Indian for like 40 years. They kept promoting her at Harvard because of it, and it turns out she's, whiter than Mitt Romney, but pay no attention to that. Also, Vivek Ramaswamy was on with Chunk yesterday. Chunk on NBC Fake News. That used to be a good show. Remember that? With Tim Russert. Because Tim Russert was an old Democrat Capitol Hill staffer too, wasn't he? Chunk Todd, a former Democrat Senate campaign staffer. And Vivek Ramaswamy said there are two genders, and it just threw Chunk for a loop. It was amazing stuff. New Make America Women Again hats are available. They look like Make America Great Again hats. I think there's a bit of pushback going on, and the left really hates that, so they're going to have to. More attacks on the Supreme Court, on Clarence Thomas, on Justice Roberts and his wife, because, well, they've got a plan for the Supreme Court. They're going to wreck it. That's their plan. Jeffrey Epstein and all of his Democrat friends coming up. More COVID updates. Another bank collapsed. Another weekend in America. We're at 888-630-9625.
If candidate Warren grew up thinking that she is Native American by heritage, who are we to say that she is not?
There's only one Chris Plante. The Chris Plante Show.
Hey, Chris here with some exciting news. Now you can listen to me live on the WMAL app. Doesn't matter if you're in your car, in the office, on the go. The WMAL app delivers crystal clear around-the-clock news coverage anywhere with cell service or Wi-Fi. So don't miss a second of your favorite shows. Download the WMAL app today on the Apple App Store or at Google Play Store. All right, we are posting photographs of myself and Joe Biden from Saturday night, myself and Kamala Harris from Saturday night at the White House dinner. And we're having a caption contest for everyone. You can add the keep it clean, please. You know, it's a family operation, but caption contest, me and Biden, me and Kamala. They're kind of amusing, I think. Let's go to the telephones right now. Let's go to Matt calling from St. Louis, Missouri. Matthew, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Happy May Day in Communistopia.
Well, I thank you very much. That's right. It's May Day. I wonder what the Obamas are doing.
Hey, I got a TV show or movie suggestion and then a book suggestion for you. So ABC Disney's got a lot of past experience with a show about someone pretending not to be something that they actually are. So I thought they could do a new TV show or movie starring Miley Cyrus, and it would be about Zoe Zephyr, and it would be called Trana Montana. And then for the book, it would be a book about advertising strategy, and it would be about Bud Light. It would be called From Dilly Dilly to Dylan Dylan, How to Destroy Your Brand in One Quick, Easy Step.
You should be writing for somebody. Well, you're writing for me right now. Yeah, Zoe Zephyr, the transgender Montana state legislator who caused all kinds of upheaval and was banned from the floor of the state house in Montana for being disruptive, which Democrats are doing now. You know, it started with the Tennessee Three. Now it's become very trendy for Democrats to stage insurrections on the floor of various state legislatures across the country. And the media loves it. The media loves Democrat insurrections, especially by elected officials. Can you say elected and insurrection in the same sentence? Because it sounds vaguely, doesn't it? Maybe it's just me, I don't know. All right, as always, a lot to get to. You hear about the Moderna CEO? The CEO of Moderna, the vaccine people? He's doing pretty well. He's suddenly very attractive to the women in the office. Well, do you hear about the deal this guy got? He can buy a ship and go to the Mediterranean and never bother anyone ever again. But before we get to that, there is a lot to get to, and the gender thing with the Democrat Party is completely crazy. They just keep it up too. In fact, our first brilliant caller this morning, Matt, calling from St. Louis, talking about Zoe Zephyr, the transgender Democrat in Montana, of all places. And Montana, it's reached Montana. It's crazy. And it just goes everywhere. In school, the 12-year-old, I've got this amazing 12-year-old who should win an award of some kind, but instead he's being sent home from school. We'll get to that. You remember Joe Biden recently said, and we had Melissa Harris Perry, we've been using this one forever, that you have to stop thinking of children as being your children. They're not property of parents and families, you know. And Joe Biden said something similar recently, about a week ago. Melissa Harris Perry on MSDNC, long time ago with this one.
We've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities.
Yeah, the whole communities. It's, community property. Your child is community. They're treating children like community property these days, aren't they? And sexualizing the heck out of them. That's a demented worldview that the left has, but it goes back to the Bolshevik Revolution. It literally does go back to the idea that, separating children from the parents and making them effectively wards of the state, of the culture, and brainwashing them at a very early age. Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov famously said, give me a child for 4 years and the seeds I have planted will never be uprooted. Give me a child for 8 years and you'll have a Bolshevik for life. A Bolshevik for life. Lenin also said, by the way, the goal of socialism is communism. He should know. Let's go back to the telephones. Let's go to Jay calling from Cape Coral, Florida. Jay, you're on the Chris Plante Show. Jay in Cape Coral, Florida. You're on the Chris Plante Show. Hey, look, Jay's not there. What's up with that? Put him on hold because he had something to say that actually pertained to everything that we're talking about here. Jay, talking about how, when you're out in public, let's say you see a kid with a T-shirt on that you find objectionable. Should you, what do you do about that? Let's see if Jay's there. I bet Jay's there now. Jay, you're on the Chris Plante Show. Uh-oh. Hey, Jay. Still not there. He went away. He put his phone down. He went to lunch. He's in Cape Coral, Florida. They got a lot of stuff going on. All right, let's go to the young man from Middleborough, Mass. His in Middleborough, Mass. You got a lot of libs. It's Massachusetts, right? And a young man, 12 years old, in school, Liam Morrison. He is a school child, but he knows a thing or two. And he wore a T-shirt to school. You will hear him explain. He wore a T-shirt to school, and his T-shirt caused trouble at school because the T-shirt on the chest says there are only two genders. And as we know, the Democrat Party has issues with gender. And they don't believe in science. They don't believe in genetics. They don't believe in chromosomes. There is a lot that they don't believe because, everything to them is radical and political. And they're completely crazy, I think, is the short version. So here is the young man, Liam Morrison, who went to the school board meeting to explain, hey, I was sent home from school because I was wearing a T-shirt that states something that is obviously true, and that is, there are only two genders. Here is Liam Morrison.
I never thought that the shirt I wore to school on March 21st would lead me to speak with you today. On that Tuesday morning, I was taken out of gym class to sit down with two adults for what turned out to be a very uncomfortable talk. I was told that people were complaining about the words on my shirt, that my shirt was making some students feel unsafe.
Unsafe?
Yes, words on a shirt made people feel unsafe. They told me that I wasn't in trouble, but it sure felt like I was. I was told that I would need to remove my shirt before I could return to class. When I nicely told them that I didn't want to do that, they called my father. Thankfully, my dad supported my decisions and came to pick me up. What did my shirt say? 5 simple words. There are only two genders. Nothing harmful, nothing threatening, just a statement I believe to be a fact. I have been told that my shirt was targeting a protected class.
Targeting a protected class.
Are their feelings more important than my rights? I don't complain when I see pride flags and diversity posters hung throughout the school.
Hang on.
Why?
You know, I don't complain when I see pride flags and diversity flags hung throughout the school. So throughout the school, they've got rainbow flags throughout the school. They've got diversity flags, doubtless transgender flags. But he dared to wear a T-shirt to school that declares on its chest, there are only two genders. And so he was pulled out of gym class because he said, and he used the words, he's a smart kid, a protected class. See, what's that protected class? That someone was offended and felt unsafe because he was wearing a T-shirt that says, there are only two genders. All right? Now, that is some pretty crazy stuff. And it gets worse, but unsafe. And then we got Chunk Todd with Vivek Ramaswamy yesterday as well on NBC Fake News Meet the Press. Yeah, so 12-year-old was sent home from school after he refused to change his T-shirt that said there are only two genders. Liam Morrison, a 7th grader at Nichols Middle School in Middleborough, Massachusetts, said he was taken out of gym class on March 21st, met with school staff who told him that people were complaining about the statement on his shirt and that it made them feel, quote, unsafe, end quote. Really? Then maybe, being out in public is not for you. Maybe being in school is too frightening for you. Getting on the bus, leaving your home, crawling out from under your bed, coming out of the closet, literally, not metaphorically, might be too unsafe for you. His comments were picked up by a popular Twitter account, Libs of TikTok. And the libs, so-called libs, lefties, really they're lefties. They hate Libs of TikTok because Libs of TikTok takes what liberals do and posts what they do. And then people mock them, see? And they can't stand that because they're very thin-skinned. They spend their whole lives attacking people in every fashion and on every platform on the planet. And then if you say boo, then they drop to the floor in panic and start crying and say, you make me feel unsafe. Because the Democrat Party has organized the mentally weak, the pathetic, and the unwell. Yes, you say, yeah, words on a T-shirt make people unsafe. Yeah. They told me I wasn't in trouble, but it sure felt like I was. 12-year-old, listen to how smart the kid is. And he's laying out, this is at a school board meeting at the microphone, reading a prepared statement, obviously in his own words.
I don't complain when I see pride flags and diversity posters hung throughout the school. Do you know why? Because others have a right to their beliefs just as I do.
What?
Not one person, staff, or student told me that they were bothered by what I was wearing. Actually, just the opposite. Several kids told me that they supported my actions and that they wanted one too. I was told that the shirt was a disruption to learning. No one got up and stormed out of class. No one burst into tears. I'm sure I would have noticed if they had. I experience disruptions to my learning every day. Kids acting out in class are a disruption, yet nothing is done. Why do the rules apply to one yet not another? I feel like these adults were telling me that it wasn't okay for me to have an opposing view. Their arguments were weak, in my opinion. I didn't go to school that day to hurt feelings or cause trouble. I have learned a lot from this experience. I learned that a lot of other students share my view. I learned that adults don't always do the right thing or make the right decisions. I know that I have a right to wear a shirt with those 5 words. Even at 12 years old, I have my own political opinions, and I have a right to express those opinions. Even at school, this right is called the First Amendment to the Constitution.
First Amendment.
My hope in being here tonight is to bring the school committee's attention to this issue. I hope that you will speak up for the rest of us so we can express ourselves without being pulled out of class. Next time, it may not only be me. There might be more students that decide to speak out. Thank you for your time and good night.
This kid is brighter than the President of the United States. He's more well-spoken than the President of the United States. He's more intelligent. He's more serious than the President of the United States. And pride flags throughout the school. I'm sorry, he's a 12-year-old. They have sexual symbols throughout the school in grammar school, right? Maybe it's a junior high school. It's a middle school. And and they're just don't call them groomers. Just don't say they're sexualizing the children, right? Now, he knows about the First Amendment. He learned that adults don't always do the right thing. He asks all the right questions about the First Amendment, about free speech, about why others are allowed to express their opinions, but or their views, or their and then there's just the simple reality that there are two genders. This has been well established for a very long time. And then in the 20th century, we cracked the genetic code and chromosomes and all of this. And now the Democrat Party and the media, but I repeat myself, they deny all of this. And there are pride flags and diversity flags and signs throughout the school, but don't show up wearing a shirt that says there are only two genders or you'll be sent home. You will be ordered. You will be ordered to remove the shirts because it does not conform with party orthodoxy. And that is today's Democrat Party. And they are, they've stolen the school system. This is part of the military invasion approach of the left in the United States. You seize control of the radio stations, NPR and the networks and news, and the television stations. This is what an invading army would do. And then, of course, you take over the schools. Next, you take over the schools because, as Lenin said, right? Just amazing stuff. Now, let's go to because this is definitely related stuff. Well, let's go to Chunk. Let's go to Chunk next. Chunk Todd is a former Democrat Party. We're going to number 15, right? 15. 14. Oh, I apologize. Number 14. Oh, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. And Chunk, he's a party activist. His wife is a party operative and takes in millions of dollars at her company from the Bernie Sanders campaign, who's a Bolshevik, and so on. You may remember the Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson being asked by Senator Marsha Blackburn about gender, about, what is a woman?
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
She's not a biologist, so she can't tell you what you're about to be a Supreme Court justice. You should. Do you know how many days there are in the week? Do you acknowledge that the sun is a big ball of fire in the sky? Honestly, are dogs bipedal? Chunk Todd with very bright man, Vivek Ramaswamy, who was he's running for president as a Republican, and he was on with Chunk yesterday on NBC.
How do you know? Are you confident that you know that gender is as binary as you're describing it? Are you confident that it isn't a spectrum?
I am.
Do you know this as a scientist?
Well, there's two X chromosomes if you're a woman, an X and a Y. That means you're a man.
There's a lot of scientific research out there. There's a lot of scientific
research
out there that says gender is a spectrum.
Chuck, I respectfully disagree.
Do you know this as a scientist? Well, Chunk, but do you know that the sun is a great ball of fire in the sky that burns hydrogen and warms our planet? Do you know that the Earth rotates on a slightly tilted axis, and that's what leads to day and night and sunrise and sunset? Vivek Ramaswamy with the gender dysphoric Chunk Todd.
Gender dysphoria for most of our history, all the way through the DSM-5, has been characterized as a mental health disorder. And I don't think it's compassionate to affirm that. I think that's cruelty. When a kid is crying out for help, what they're asking for is, you got to ask the question of what else is going wrong at home? What else is going wrong at school? Let's be compassionate and get to the heart of that, rather than playing this game as though we're actually changing our medical understanding for the last 100 years. I go back to this.
Do you know this as a scientist? I love that. Well, if you're not a scientist, you can't say there are two genders and that gender is binary.
If a parent is dealing with a child that has these, that may have these issues, trust me, the last thing they want to do is consider something like this. But if that is what they think could help their child pursue happiness, or not to kill themselves,
why
take away that option? Again, Why shouldn't it be up to the parents?
So part of why parents
shouldn't
now
it be up to the
suddenly
parent?
feel that way, let's ask ourselves that, Chuck, is we've created a culture that teaches parents that they're being bigoted or that they're bad people if they don't actually take those steps. So part of what I think is, listen, gender dysphoria, for the rare few people who have suffered it, is a condition of suffering. My question is, why on earth are we going out of our way to create even more of it? And there's no doubt that the cultural movement in this country, even education, is creating more gender dysphoria. If it's a condition of suffering, let's not create more of it. That's what we're doing.
Chunk. Oh, it's up to the parent. I'm sorry, Chunk. In schools across America, Democrats are empowering school employees to feed puberty blockers to little boys and hormones to little girls, steroids to little girls, without telling the parents, quite explicitly, while keeping it from the parents. Whoopi Goldberg made the same idiotic remark last week. No, you guys are actually denying parents a role in this process, for one thing, and you're enticing and encouraging culturally. And we just played Middleborough Mass student Liam Morrison talking about how there are pride flags throughout the school. Not that they're encouraging this sort of thing, not that they're grooming. And also, shh, don't tell the parents.
I am. You know this as a scientist?
Yeah, what are you, some kind of a scientist or something, Vivek Ramaswamy? Chunk Todd actually says, well, you say there are two genders. And then he challenges him by suggesting he's not a scientist. Do you say that as a scientist? Chunk says to Vivek Ramaswamy, a very smart man. Pretty amazing, I've got to say.
Are you confident that it isn't a spectrum?
I am.
You know this as a scientist?
See, if you're not a scientist, I'm not going to take your word for it. We're going to ask a scientist who will say what we want them to say, because the party determines what can be said and what cannot be said. We got a tweet from Lib saying, oh, that kid read that statement in school just like Tucker Carlson wrote it for him. Yeah, Tucker Carlson's writing for 12-year-olds in Massachusetts, right? And Tucker Carlson probably prompted the school officials. We call them officials now, isn't that? Administrators, teachers, we call them officials, like we're the Soviet Union. And the officials sent him home because it was all part of a Tucker Carlson plot. By the way, Joe Biden took shots at Tucker Carlson at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and the crowd roared, Then they had a person identifying as a comedian. I'm making quotation marks with my fingers. But if we can all identify as whatever we'd like, then he can identify as a comedian. I remember when comedians would tell jokes and people would laugh because they enjoyed the humor. That's not really the case anymore. Pure politics, like the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Yeah, so a tweet from a lib. The kid attacking the 12-year-old kid who was sent home because he was wearing a T-shirt that dared to say there are only two genders. And the school can't tolerate that. They don't believe in free speech. They don't believe in the First Amendment. They don't believe in the United States of America. And if your views or your rhetoric deviate from the party line, well, you're going home.